You're lucky I chose you. My girlfriend said those words while sitting across from me at a restaurant. I remember staring at her for a second. Then I nodded and changed the subject. 4 months later, she was sitting in her car outside my apartment asking why I suddenly seemed like a different person. The truth was simple. I wasn't different. I had just stopped chasing someone who never appreciated being caught. My name is Ethan. I was 32 when all this happened. At the time, I'd been dating my girlfriend, Qley, for almost 3 years. For most of that relationship, I thought I was lucky. Lucky to have someone attractive. Lucky to have someone ambitious. Lucky to have someone who seemed confident and driven. Looking back now, I realize confidence and entitlement can look very similar when you're wearing rose-colored glasses. When we first met, Qley was fun to be around. She challenged me, made me laugh, pushed me to think bigger. I genuinely believed we had a future together. The first year was great. The second year was mostly good. The third year was when the cracks started showing. Not huge cracks, small ones. The kind people ignore because they don't want to admit something is changing. The first red flag was her constant need for validation. Everything became a competition. Who earned more? Who had the better job? Who had more followers? Who had more options? If one of her friends got engaged, she needed a bigger ring. If someone bought a house, she immediately started talking about moving. Nothing was ever enough. At first, I thought she was just ambitious. Then I started noticing that she wasn't trying to improve her life. She was trying to outperform everyone else's. The second red flag was her friend group, especially her best friend, Vanessa. Vanessa had a different boyfriend every 6 months, and somehow every breakup was entirely the man's fault. According to her, women should never compromise, never apologize, never settle. Qley absorbed that mindset like a sponge. The more time she spent with Vanessa, the more critical she became. One night we were having dinner together when Qley casually asked, "Do you ever feel insecure about where you are in life?" I laughed. "Not really." She looked surprised. "Seriously? Why would I?" She shrugged. "I don't know. I just expected more by your age." I should have paid attention to that comment. Instead, I laughed it off. That became a pattern. Qley would say something disrespectful. I'd excuse it. Move on. Pretend it didn't bother me. The third red flag appeared a few months later. She started comparing me to other men. Not directly at first. Just little comments. My friend's boyfriend bought her a new car. My cousin's fiancé owns 2 properties. Vanessa is dating a guy who travels internationally every month. Every comparison came wrapped inside casual conversation. Never direct enough to start a fight. Always obvious enough to leave a mark. Eventually, I asked, "Are you trying to tell me something?" She immediately got defensive. "No." Then she'd accuse me of being sensitive. The conversation always ended the same way. I apologized. She moved on. Nothing changed. The fourth red flag happened during a family gathering. One of Qley's cousins asked when we planned to get married. Before I could answer, Qley laughed. "Ethan still has some catching up to do." Everyone laughed, including me. But inside, something felt wrong. Because I wasn't behind in life. I had a stable career. No debt. Good savings. A growing investment portfolio. The problem wasn't my situation. The problem was Qley had created an imaginary standard nobody could realistically meet. And every time I got close, she moved it further away. Then came the incident that changed how I viewed everything. We were celebrating her promotion at a nice restaurant. I paid for dinner, bought flowers, made reservations. The whole evening was about her. And honestly, I was happy for her. Toward the end of the night, she had a couple glasses of wine and started talking about relationships. Then she laughed and said, "You know what's funny?" "What?" She leaned back in her chair. "You got really lucky." I smiled. "How?" She pointed at herself. "I chose you." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "I'm serious." I stared at her. She continued. "Most women would have wanted more." The table suddenly felt very quiet. Not because of what she said, because of how confidently she said it. Like she genuinely believed she had done me a favor by being with me. I asked, "That's how you see us?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, don't be dramatic." There it was. The same pattern again. Disrespect. Deflection. Dismissal. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I just paid the bill and drove home. But that night, something changed. For the first time in 3 years, I started wondering whether Qley actually loved me, or if she simply loved being admired. A week later, she gave me the answer. And it was much worse than I expected. A week after Qley told me I was lucky she chose me, she acted like the conversation never happened. That was one of her favorite tactics. Say something hurtful. Watch me react. Then pretend nothing happened. If I brought it up later, I became the problem. Too sensitive. Too emotional. Too insecure. At least that's what she always told me. The strange thing was that I started noticing a pattern. Every disagreement somehow ended with me apologizing, even when I wasn't the one who caused it. One evening, we met for dinner after work. I had spent the entire day dealing with a difficult client and honestly just wanted a peaceful evening. Instead, Qley spent most of dinner talking about a guy Vanessa had recently started dating. Apparently, he owned multiple rental properties, drove a luxury SUV, took expensive vacations. I listened quietly. Then Qley said, "That's what ambition looks like." I looked up. "What does that mean?" Immediately, she sighed. "Nothing." "No, what does it mean?" "There you go again." "Again what?" "Making everything about yourself." I sat back in my chair, because somehow a conversation that started with her comparing me to another man had become evidence that I was insecure. That was when I started realizing the issue wasn't one comment. It wasn't one argument. It was a system. A system where Qley could say whatever she wanted, and if I reacted, I became the villain. A few weeks later, another situation proved it. One of my closest friends got engaged. The entire group went out to celebrate. Everyone was having a good time until the conversation shifted toward future plans. Someone jokingly asked Qley when she expected a proposal. She laughed, then said, "That depends on Ethan." The group smiled. Then she added, "If he ever catches up." Everyone got quiet. Not because the joke landed, because it didn't. For the first time, I noticed other people looking uncomfortable. Even my friend Mark gave me a strange look. On the drive home, I finally decided to address it. "Can I ask you something?" Qley stared out the window. "Sure. Why do you keep making comments like that?" Immediately, she became defensive. "What comments?" "You know exactly what I mean." She crossed her arms. "No, I don't." I explained calmly. "No accusations. No anger. Just honesty." The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes before she flipped it around. Now I was attacking her. Now I was ruining the evening. Now I was creating drama. By the time we got home, she had somehow convinced herself she was the victim. And somehow I felt guilty. Again. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying conversations from the last year. The comparisons. The jokes. The dismissive comments. The constant criticism. Suddenly, they all looked different, because when viewed individually, they seemed small. Together, they told a story, a very clear one. Qley didn't see me as her partner anymore. She saw me as someone competing for her approval. And the worst part, I had been participating in that competition, trying harder, doing more, giving more, proving more, all while she kept moving the finish line. A month later, things escalated again. Vanessa invited us to a rooftop party. The entire evening felt strange. Qley spent most of her time talking to people I didn't know. Any time I joined the conversation, she seemed annoyed. At one point, I walked over while she was talking to a group of friends. The second I arrived, she rolled her eyes and said, "There he is." The group laughed. I forced a smile. Then one of the guys jokingly asked, "So how'd you land, Qley?" Before I could answer, Qley spoke first. "Honestly, persistence." Everyone laughed. Then she added, "I eventually gave him a chance." That sentence hit harder than she realized. Not because it embarrassed me, because it revealed how she genuinely viewed our relationship. Like she had awarded me something. Like I should still be grateful. The ride home was silent. And for the first time, I wasn't hurt. I was tired, emotionally exhausted. Because no matter what I accomplished, Qley always found a way to position herself above me. A few days later came the discovery that changed everything. I was having lunch with Mark when he asked a simple question. "Why do you let her talk to you like that?" I stared at him. "What do you mean?" He looked confused. "Dude, everybody notices it." That hit me harder than anything Qley had said, because I genuinely thought these moments were happening only in my head. Apparently, they weren't. Mark continued, "You're always defending her." I stayed quiet. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You spend more time trying to earn her respect than actually receiving it." That sentence followed me home. And the more I thought about it, the more accurate it became. I wasn't in a relationship. I was in an endless audition. And no matter what I did, I was never getting the role. A week later, everything finally exploded. Qley came over after work. She seemed irritated before she even walked through the door. Apparently, Vanessa had gotten engaged. Again, another comparison. Another reminder. Another reason I wasn't enough. The argument started small, then grew. Eventually, Qley looked directly at me and said, "Honestly, Ethan, maybe we're not compatible." I stayed quiet. She continued, "If you're this insecure all the time, maybe this relationship isn't going anywhere." I could see it happening. The same pattern. The same manipulation. The same blame shifting. The same attempt to make me responsible for everything. Then she delivered the ultimatum. "If you don't like how..." The second I said, "Okay," something changed. Not in Qley. In me. For years, every disagreement followed the same script. She pushed. I explained. She criticized. I defended myself. She threatened distance. I chased connection. This time, the script broke. Because I didn't argue. I didn't negotiate. I didn't try to convince her that I was worth respecting. I simply accepted what she said. And Qley didn't know what to do with that. She stared at me. "That's it." I nodded. "That's it." She looked confused, almost irritated, like I'd skipped my lines in a play. Then she grabbed her purse and left. I expected her to call that night. She didn't. I expected a text the next morning. Nothing. 3 days passed. Then 4. Then a week. And during that week, something interesting happened. I felt lighter. Not happier. Not yet. But lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly evaluating myself through someone else's standards. I wasn't wondering if I made enough money, or drove the right car, or had achieved enough. I simply went to work, went to the gym, spent time with friends, and enjoyed the silence. Meanwhile, Qley assumed I'd eventually come running back. I found that out through Vanessa. A mutual friend mentioned that Qley kept saying, "He'll call eventually. He always does. He's just upset." But I didn't call, because for the first time, I wasn't trying to win her approval. 2 weeks later, she finally reached out. A simple text. "Are we seriously doing this?" I stared at my phone, then replied, "Doing what?" The response came instantly. "This." I waited a few minutes, then typed, "You told me maybe we weren't compatible." Her answer surprised me. I didn't mean it like that. Of course she didn't, because for years, those statements were never consequences. They were leverage, a way to regain control of the conversation. The problem was they only worked when I was afraid of losing her. And I wasn't anymore. Over the next few days, Qley's messages became more frequent. First irritation, then confusion, then frustration. She wasn't upset that I had left. She was upset that I wasn't chasing. That was the first clue. The second clue came through mutual friends. Apparently, Qley had started telling people that I was being immature, that I was giving her the silent treatment, that I had overreacted. At first, I ignored it. Then one evening, Mark called. "You know, people are asking questions, right?" I laughed. I figured, "What do you want me to tell them?" "Just tell the truth." And the truth was simple. She told me maybe we shouldn't be together. I agreed. That was it. No dramatic story. No screaming match. No betrayal. Just consequences. And once people heard the actual story, things started changing. That was karma wave one. The narrative stopped working, because nobody could explain how I was the villain for accepting the ultimatum she gave me. Then came karma wave two. The social fallout. A few mutual friends started pulling away from Qley. Not because they hated her, because they had witnessed the pattern. The jokes, the comparisons, the public criticism. For years they had seen it. Now they finally talked about it. One friend admitted, "I always thought she treated you like a project." Another said, "It never seemed like she respected you." Those conversations weren't satisfying. They were sad, because they confirmed something I had spent years refusing to see. The disrespect wasn't hidden. Everybody noticed it. Except me. About a month later, Qley called. Not texted. Called. I almost didn't answer. But I did. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes. At first, she sounded angry, then emotional, then confused. Finally, she asked the question that explained everything. "Why aren't you fighting for us?" I sat quietly for a second, then answered honestly. "I spent 3 years fighting for us." Silence. Then she said, "So that's it." I looked around my apartment. The apartment that felt peaceful again. The apartment where I no longer felt judged. The apartment where I no longer felt like I was constantly failing some invisible test. Then I said, "I think that's it." More silence. Then she hung up. That was the moment everything became real. Not because the relationship ended, because I finally accepted it. Then came karma wave three. The emotional consequence. Over the next couple months, Qley reached out several times. Not directly asking to get back together, just finding reasons to start conversations. Sending old photos, mentioning memories, bringing up places we'd visited, trying to recreate emotional connections. But something had changed. I wasn't angry anymore. And because I wasn't angry, I couldn't be manipulated. Anger still creates attachment. Indifference doesn't. Eventually, a mutual friend told me Qley was struggling. Not financially, not professionally, emotionally. Because for years, she believed something. She believed I would never leave. That no matter how many comparisons she made, no matter how many dismissive comments she delivered, no matter how many times she made me compete for approval, I would stay. And when that assumption collapsed, so did the power she thought she had. Meanwhile, my life became surprisingly simple. I accepted a promotion I'd been delaying, started traveling more, reconnected with old friends, spent time with family. Most importantly, I stopped measuring myself through someone else's expectations. That was the real upgrade. Not money, not status, not revenge. Self-respect. Because self-respect changes everything. About 6 months later, I saw Qley at a mutual friend's birthday party. Our first time seeing each other since the breakup. She walked over. We talked politely. No drama. No hostility. Just two people having a conversation. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You seem different." I smiled. Maybe I did. Or maybe this was simply the version of me that existed before I spent years trying to earn someone's approval. We talked for a few minutes. Then she left. And that was the last meaningful conversation we ever had. The relationship didn't end